Sunrise over the arid African savanna illuminated the resting Dalo pride, a perfect picture of strength and camouflage. Their tawny coats disappeared seamlessly into the golden grass, creating an absolute harmony between the predator and its environment. But on this fateful morning, that harmony was shattered by an impossible color. When the mother lioness, Senna, carefully nudged her newborn cub into the world, the entire pride froze. Instead of the expected earthy tones, this tiny creature possessed a shocking, brilliant snow-white coat, and his eyes shimmered with a pale pink hue. His name would be Kale, a genetic miracle, an albino lion cub. Yet, in this harsh world, that extraordinary beauty was a curse. The initial astonishment quickly turned into cold caution. Zahur, the mighty pride male, approached not with a father's gentleness, but with the sharp calculation of a leader assessing a threat. Kale's flawless white coat, meant to be a gift, was instead a blazing beacon in the open grass, an unmistakable target for every predator. Kale's presence did not just endanger himself. It put the entire pride at risk. This was not a matter of cruelty, but of primal calculation. The survival of the group was paramount. The story of Kale, the lion cub forced to learn the cruel truth about camouflage and belonging, had begun with rejection from the very first minute. The days that followed were a silent, relentless tragedy. The Ndalo pride, usually defined by its fierce loyalty, began to maintain a physical distance. The other lionesses avoided Kale, and Zahur upheld a discouraging perimeter, ensuring that no interaction could occur with the anomalous cub. His silent dominance created an invisible wall. Every time Senna tried to shield Kale, his dazzling white fur only drew more unwanted scrutiny. He was a blaring spotlight in a world built for shadows. This friction began to tear at the pride's delicate social structure. Senna, the mother, was trapped in an impossible, instinctive civil war. Her maternal love was absolute, driven by a fierce biological connection. Yet the deep, ancient wisdom of her species screamed a different truth. Survival is the only law. From a nearby sanctuary, Dr. Albino, the head veterinarian, observed the unfolding drama with a heavy heart. She knew the rule of the wild: let nature take its course. But this was a unique exception, a genetic anomaly that made the odds impossible. Lena documented Senna's agony, her nervous pacing, her hesitation when trying to nurse, and her desperate, futile attempts to rub dirt onto Kale's white fur, hoping to create temporary camouflage. Kale's desperate cries for warmth and milk were only met with his mother's profound distress. Kale's presence became a source of ceaseless social friction, an unwelcome disruption to the subtle harmony of the pride. As the group grew weary and anxious, Zahur's silent condemnation intensified. Kale was a vulnerability, a flaw that nature would not forgive. The inevitable breaking point arrived under the harsh midday sun. Senna, driven by the absolute necessity of preserving her other young and the pride's stability, carried Kale to a remote rock outcrop. She looked down at him, her strange, luminous son. There was no malice in her deep, golden eyes, only a profound, wrenching sorrow, the look of a creature sacrificing a piece of her soul for the greater good of her family. With a soft, mournful low growl, she gently nudged him one last time, turned, and walked back towards the pride shadows. Little Kale was left alone, a stark white spot on the hot, burnt orange earth. He was cold, exposed, and utterly abandoned. From a distance, Zahur watched, his expression unmoving. The decision had been made. The anomaly could not be part of the pride's future. Dr. Lena knew the intervention could not wait. "We have to bring him in," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The supreme conservation rule was to allow nature its course, but letting Kale die from exposure and starvation was a tragedy they could prevent. The rescue was a tense and swift operation. Kale was swaddled in warm blankets, safe, yet permanently wounded by abandonment. Kale's world utterly transformed, from the wild, dangerous savanna to the sheltered, loving environment of the sanctuary nursery. swaddled warmly. He quickly adapted to the life-giving bottle held by Dr. Lena Rue. She became his stability, his source of comfort, and his entire pride. His life revolved around the scent of Lena's scrubs, the comforting, steady rhythm of her heart, and the unwavering presence of his protective, surrogate mother. Under Lena's devoted care, Kale did not just survive, he thrived. He grew into an intelligent, playful, and deeply affectionate cub. But behind his striking pink eyes, a profound, quiet sadness always lingered. The unanswered question of why. Lena designed Kale's habitat with one crucial, yet painful, feature. A massive one-way glass panel overlooking the primary lion habitat, where Ndalo Pride lived. 4 hours every day, Kale performed a solitary, heart-wrenching ritual. He would sit by the glass, his pale form a stark contrast to the thick barrier, and simply watch the family that had cast him out. He saw the other tawny cubs riding safely on their mothers' backs, playing with siblings, and resting securely under Zahor's vigilant gaze. Kale pressed his beautiful, pale paws against the cool glass, his breath fogging the surface, and let out soft, questioning calls that went unheard. He was an observer, a ghost in his own habitat, separated by a physical wall and a difference he could not possibly comprehend. He knew he was a lion. He smelled, moved, and sounded like a lion. Yet, he was not with the lions. Why am I here, and they are there? That was the silent, aching burden he carried daily. Lena knew that physical health was only half the battle. Kale needed peace, a resolution to the conflict that haunted him. He grew into a strong, lanky juvenile, his bond with Lena absolute. He learned the pride's routines, their specific calls, their very essence, all from his lonely perch. But the true, brutal lesson of the lesson of survival and sacrifice, was one that no human could teach him with words. He had to witness it, to feel it, to understand it in the ancient language of instinct. The answer, as life often dictates, would come not from a loving hand, but from a swift, brutal moment of ecological truth. Kale had knowledge of his family, but he desperately lacked understanding. It was a bright, harsh afternoon in Kale's large outdoor play yard. He was running, his white coat flashing like a brilliant signal against the dense green foliage, a picture of pure, unbridled joy. Dr. Lena was watching, smiling at his energy. The pivotal moment began with the quiet arrival of prey. A small herd of tawny-colored gazelles, perfectly matching the dry bush, descended to graze nearby. Kale paused his game, his head cocked in curiosity. Unnoticed by any of them, a shadowy threat was closing in. A sleek, perfectly camouflaged leopard, a true master of stealth, was stalking the periphery. Suddenly, a new element entered the scene. A lone, distinctively white cattle egret landed among the tawny gazelles. Against the natural browns and greens, the white bird was a living, breathing spotlight, completely exposed. In an instant, the world exploded into action. The leopard launched its attack. The tawny gazelles, their coloring an evolutionary masterpiece, vanished. They scattered, their coats immediately blending into the chaotic background of grass and scrub, effectively melting away. They were safe, but the white egret had no such protection. Its color, its uniqueness, had made it the obvious, unmissable target. Before it could react, the leopard struck with terrifying precision. Kale stood frozen, his playful demeanor gone, replaced by an unnerving stillness. He had witnessed the raw, brutal calculation of survival. He watched the leopard vanish back into the shadows. Then slowly, deliberately, he lowered his gaze to his own magnificent body. He saw the pale pink skin and the fine, snow-white fur on his arms. He was the egret. His eyes then traveled across the distance to the main habitat. He saw his father, Zahor, resting deep within the shadow of a thick acacia bush. Zahor's massive black mane and tawny body were nearly invisible, a piece of the darkness itself. He saw Senna and the other lionesses hunting on the horizon. Their dark, dappled coats offered perfect camouflage. They were the gazelles. In that heart-stopping second, the puzzle of his entire existence clicked into place. A wave of understanding, so profound and devastating it was almost human, washed over him. His family's rejection wasn't born of cruelty or a lack of love. It was born of primal, instinctual preservation. In the wild, his beautiful white coat wouldn't be a marvel. It would be a death sentence, a constant beacon for predators that would endanger not only him, but the entire pride. They hadn't rejected him. They had rejected the fatal danger he represented. Kale slowly walked to the quietest corner, curled into a tight ball. He wrapped his long arms around his legs, burying his face in his knees. A sound came from him that Dr. Lena had never heard before. Not a cry of hunger or a shriek for attention, but a low, guttural sob of pure, unadulterated grief. It was the sound of a broken heart. Lena rushed to his side. As she knelt down, Kale lifted his head, and her own heart shattered. A single, glistening tear was tracing a path down his cheek. He looked at her, and his eyes were no longer filled with confusion, but with the terrible clarity of acceptance. He finally knew why. Kale was never the same after that day. The desperate, longing calls toward his family ceased, replaced by a quiet, melancholic observation. He had achieved the terrible clarity of acceptance. With the why answered, Kale was finally free to focus on the how to live his life. Under Dr. Lena's guidance, Kale learned to transform his difference into strength. He grew into a magnificent, powerful animal, a stunning white king in a kingdom of one. His difference was no longer a source of confusion, but a profound statement of survival. Dr. Lena and her team focused on enriching his environment, recognizing that his unique situation gave him a unique purpose. Kale's story transcended the sanctuary walls, making him a global ambassador for all who are different, for all who have felt the sting of rejection. Visitors now come from around the world not just to see the rare white lion, but to leave with a deeper lesson about acceptance, the brutal logic of nature, and the astonishing emotional depth of these creatures. Kale's story teaches us a difficult truth. What makes us unique, what makes us stand out, is often perceived as a weakness by those who are fearful or bound by convention. But the rejection we face is rarely about our true worth. It is about the fear of the unknown that we represent. Kale realized he didn't need to join the pride to have purpose. He needed to understand why he couldn't, and in that understanding, he found a profound, silent peace. His difference became his undeniable strength, shining a spotlight on the sanctuary's mission. Kale's journey is a living testament to survival against the odds, but he didn't do it alone. His life is a gift preserved by the dedicated staff, the medical resources, and the specialized habitat provided by this sanctuary. We believe that every life, every creature, no matter how different, no matter how much of an anomaly, deserves a second chance. If Kale's story has connected with your own journey of finding belonging, if it has offered you a moment of peace and understanding, we ask you to join us. The work required to maintain his specialized care and to save other animals facing insurmountable challenges is constant. Your support ensures that Kale remains safe and comfortable, and that his message of grace and acceptance continues to reach the world. Click the link in the description below to make a donation. Help us protect the King of Grace, and continue telling the stories that change how we see ourselves and the world around us. Thank you.